Okay. I don't see anybody yet, but
That was really succinct.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was great. That was Ray Kornman who said that. Yeah,
Good.
absolutely. And it was
Okay.
amazing to me, Gus, to see how the difference in people's lives with dogs, and you sort of wonder why don't more people do it? And I spoke to one person, and he said, "Well, honestly, I don't like dogs, and I didn't like them before I was blind, and I don't think I'd like them now." And
Oh,
another
no.
person, there was one something across the street, said, "Well, I lost my vision in my 30s. I was working as a salesman, which I still am. I didn't feel it was right to walk into somebody's office with a dog." And he said, "And I think with a dog, I wouldn't get to meet so many nice people like you."
Oh,
I thought
just to let everyone know, I just want to let you we're still having difficulties. I think there are people in the room as they gather, so
Okay.
just let people know that there are going to be other people in the room besides just us. So we will get started on time. Hopefully, you can
Okay.
see the screen share on there. Did the screen share leave?
Yeah.
It did. Yeah.
Oh, I have to open it back up again. Again, it's one of those things for me. So thank you very much.
And I will tell you that when you mentioned that somebody didn't like dogs, my dog did pick his head up and go, "Really?"
What kind do you have?
He's 40 pounds a mutt.
Oh.
Yeah. He's great. I actually tried to get a guide dog at one point, and it's the only time in my life I've heard, "I'm sorry, you have too much vision." I went, "Thanks."
Oh, really? Oh my gosh.
that's not a response I would have expected.
I do have enough residual vision that I think the concern was I wouldn't be letting the dog do his job or her job.
Oh. Oh. That's interesting.
Yeah.
What's the cutoff?
I don't know if there's a numerical cutoff. I think it's once they came and did kind of an assessment, and once they got a feel for how much residual vision I had and sort of what I was able to do out on the street without a dog, they kind of went, "You're good with a cane."
Oh,
Oh.
I've had people sent to low vision and they told them they had too much vision. And it's like, well, if the patient's having problems, help them, you know?
Yeah.
Mandy, I was once giving a lecture at Yale, and a guy came up to me. There's this ophthalmologist. I remember him he's incredibly well dressed, very put together. And he came up to me afterwards and he said, "You don't have low vision. There's nothing wrong with your vision." And I said, "I'm sorry." He said, "I saw you reading your notes." And I was so stunned that he didn't know the difference between acuity and visual field and the importance of it. It was just, I could have come up with some kind of a response.
It's very unsensitive to not realize that if you consider yourself visually impaired, that he should be treating you that way to help you. I don't understand why he would challenge you.
No, it's astounding. It was astounding to me. Absolutely astounding.
So I'm just going to interrupt for a second because we are getting more participants in the room. So I just wanted to welcome everyone coming in. We are going to start in a few minutes to keep on time. But welcome to the Going Blind virtual panel discussion. Our panelists are already getting started and talking amongst ourselves. So hopefully you're enjoying that, kind of like off the record kind of stuff, but that's always the best. Yeah, of course. But we will get started in a few minutes, and I just wanted to let you know that. But we're welcome. We're real glad you're here, and we will start in a few minutes. And now you're not talking. Thank you very much.
Adam, so I was going to ask Adam, so are you using low vision aids now?
Yeah, I use screen enlargement software on my computer. High contrast is really big for me. The like typical word of white background and white and black lettering really glaring for my eyes. So I use a lot of dark background and lighter text. And I use my cane more as a notification to other folks than as
Oh,
a tool for me, right? Like, because I do have that residual vision after, I better have some residual vision after 37 eye surgeries.
that's insane. That is insane.
Yeah.
Adam, what is your diagnosis?
Posterior polymorphous corneal dystrophy, fan keratopathy, and glaucoma and calcium deposits.
Which means, Adam,
That the cornea, which is the window to the eye, has problems not letting light in.
Right.
But the
and this started when you were
glaucoma,
young, right?
Yeah, so the kid's congenital. I've had 6 cornea transplants. And at the time, in '78, I was born in Maine, and they took one look at me and went, "We don't know what we're doing," and they sent me to Boston. So I had care at Mass Eye and Ear my whole life until I moved here. And yeah, I at the time in I think '81, I was one of the youngest patients to have ever had a trabeculectomy.
No.
It didn't work because I was too young and I healed too quick.
Bless you.
Adam, after your first or second surgery, did you see well?
After my first cornea transplant, I won't say what I actually said when I blinked and looked out of my right eye.
Thank you, Adam, for that.
John knows me well. But it was a very amazing. I mean, I really did not know how visually impaired I was until I had that cornea transplant.
Wow.
So your retina works.
Yeah, so it was a good thing.
Retina works. There's no optic nerve damage, which my ophthalmologist was very surprised about at the time. She went, "Wow, during your transplant, I actually got to look at the optic nerve and it's pink and healthy." So,
Okay.
yeah.
So I think we're going to get started. I want to make sure we keep everyone on time as much as possible. So welcome to everybody in the room. We have, where's my number at here? We have 22 people in the room right now, so we do have some visitors with us. So I want to thank everyone for being here, and I will go off my scripted notes because that's the best way to do that. So hello from beautiful Arizona, and the reason I say that is because I know we have visitors from across the country here today in the room. So welcome to everyone. Even though some of our people are scattered across the country ourselves, we will go with the lovely Arizona weather for today. So my name is John Williams, and I am with the Arizona Center for the Blind and Visually Impaired. And as part of our Vision Awareness Month activities here at our center in Phoenix, we are presenting this movie, Going Blind, which we will get into in a moment with the producer director, Joe Lovett. But we're also doing this panel discussion. And one of the reasons we wanted to do that is to bring awareness and have a frank, open discussion regarding visual impairment, some of the challenges, and I think panelists that we have today can help bring some of those up also, and what's moving forward. And our goal here at the center is to create independence for those that are blind, visually impaired, or with combined vision and hearing loss. And I think that that's what we want to get out of this discussion today is, after seeing the movie, what we're going to do to go forward and how we can make that happen. So I'm going to try to be, hold on. There we go. Holla.
Oh.
I can do things now. This is great. So just as a reminder, I want to give our information on here too. So again, we're the Arizona Center for the Blind and Visually Impaired. And then also we are doing this in partnership with the Art in Medicine program from the University of Arizona College of Medicine here in Phoenix. They've been a great partner. And I know there's a lot of people on this on this discussion Zoom today that are affiliated with the University of Arizona and the College of Medicine. So we want to welcome you also to today's process. So a couple of Zoom reminders. Please have your microphones on mute except for the panelists. Otherwise, it's going to be a very boring conversation. You can try the closed captioning. We tried to set this up, and for people that needed closed captioning, it should be on the bottom of your screen. I can't guarantee it's going to work because with everything as first timers, sometimes it doesn't. Does it work? It does not work, I've been told from my cohort in the IT area here. So, but we will have this as a recorded session, so everyone will receive a copy of this. So just want to let you know for that. And feel free to use the chat room for questions. We are going to monitor the chat, and we will try to bring some of those questions back to the panel at the end. And certainly you can set up your screens depending on how you want to view the panelist discussion today. So we're going to get the ball started here. So we're going to introduce our panelists, and I'm going to introduce our moderator first. So Jamie, you're going to blush a little bit because I get to talk about you for a second. So our moderator today is Jaime Cerreta. She is a anchor and reporter for Arizona's Family 3 TV and host of the Good Morning Arizona on the weekends. She is local, a native from Phoenix, went to Chaparral High School and graduated from ASU's Walter Cronkite School of Broadcast Journalism. And for those who are local here in Arizona, she comes from a very famous family, and I probably don't have to tell people that live in Arizona, but if you've ever had Cerreta candy, you can blame Jamie for having something along those lines.
It's good.
It's good.
I
So
had
I'm
some
gonna
today.
so I'm gonna turn this over to Jamie, and
Okay.
she's gonna take you, but we'll be all here. So Jamie, go right ahead.
Well, thank you for the great introduction, John, and thank you for asking me to do this. I had an interesting vision story that happened with me earlier this year. It feels like decades ago since we've been through the pandemic and everything, but in early February, I got a really big scare when I thought I saw floaters. I thought I just had floaters. I didn't know what the deal was. I called my eye doc, who I've been going to for years, and said, I don't know if something's wrong with my contact, whatever. So I showed up expecting him to fix something and then I would be leaving. He told me that I had retinal tear and detachment, and I was sent to a retinal specialist that night. So I had to call my parents. I had to call out for the next day. I was told that I was going blind had I not had treatment for this retinal tear and detachment. I was completely startled. I had no suspicion that anything like that was going on. And I told my story on television, and through doing that, I realized how many people don't really, you go do your annuals, you see your dentist every year, et cetera, but maybe a lot of people don't see their eye doctor and how important those checkups are. And we'll talk later about neurology and what our brain does, but our brain will really help fill in. You saw in the movie some of that vision. So I think if I could just say anything, it's important to go see your doctor every year and just make sure your eyes are good to go, because that was something that I was extremely fragile that I did not realize until that one day. So I'm glad that I went to the eye doctor. So I want to introduce our panelists that we have. So I'll have you guys give a nod and a smile. I think we've got the beautiful screen up here as well. But you know Joseph Lovett. He is the Peabody Award-winning producer and director of Going Blind. We have Dr. Mandy Conway. She is the clinical professor for ophthalmology and basic medical sciences for the University of Arizona, with more than 25 years of experience in medical and surgical retina care. Dr. Paul Bendheim, clinical professor of neurology for the University of Arizona College of Medicine and founder, chairman, and CEO of Brain Savers LLC. And Adam Zimmerman, senior advisor, investigations at CVS Health, employee relations, and a board member of the Arizona Center for the Blind and Visually Impaired. So we want to start with the star of the film, Joseph Lovett. So you did this movie how long ago, and how has your vision changed since this happened? Where are you now?
Sure. Well, I did. The film was premiered at the World Ophthalmology Congress in 2010, and because of the internet and because medical schools in particular have found it valuable, and service organizations, it's had an amazingly long life. It's had 5 years on public television already, and we just signed another 5-year contract. So it's wonderful that people are learning about vision loss and how different people deal with it. My vision I have glaucoma, which is an advancing disease for many of us who have it, and I've continued to lose vision. a few years ago, about 3 years ago, I got a terrible infection in my left eye, which had already been dealing with some very difficult corneal edema and some other issues, and I eventually the retina tore off, and unlike you, I'm in a very different situation. I decided not to have it repaired. I felt that the eye was so far gone at that point. I was unwilling to face the surgery and maybe resurgery and maybe infection and then maybe resurgery after that. And I'd had enough in that eye, and I accepted to let it go. And my doctors were not eager to dissuade me from that decision, considering the state of the eye. But what happened was that I wound up using a cane for 6 months, and until I got used to monovision, and then my depth perception sort of came back. It's pretty good now. So and then last year I had a cataract removed, which I hadn't been doing because my kind of glaucoma is such that it's a very dangerous operation. I have exfoliation glaucoma. And since I only had one eye, my doctors were thinking that it was not a great idea to try this operation until I really needed it, because the eye can become very, very brittle, and you can lose your vision in a simple cataract operation. However, it went very, very well, and my vision is vastly improved. And so I'm pretty good right now. That's the long story.
I was intrigued by the way you told the story, because you acted both as reporter and explorer.
Yeah, well, I guess my philosophy, and I have the privilege of being a journalist and a filmmaker, and which is an enormous privilege. And so when life gives you lemons, you can make lemonade with it. And so I've done a number of films that have dealt with various challenges that I've faced, and it helps me because it objectifies it, I guess, and then I can move forward without sort of wallowing in my misery. So,
And you met such interesting characters.
yeah.
They all had great ability to adapt and really great attitudes as well.
The people that I met saved my emotional life. There's no question about it. There's no question about it. I mean, with continuing vision loss, well, Jessica Jones in the film, who's really sort of the star of the film, Jessica said to me, I couldn't stand doing what you're doing. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, losing your vision little by little. She said, I couldn't stand, and a number of people have said this to me, they couldn't stand the anxiety, where I'm so grateful to have the vision that I have left. And she said it was much easier for her to lose her vision all at once, and then deal with being a blind person and getting back on track as a blind person. And which was fascinating to me, realizing that you can do this. And everyone in the film showed me that no matter what happened, I could do this. And during one operation, I had lost all of my vision because of a bleed. And, the doctor said, well, it'll be better, it'll come back. And I chose, of course, to believe him. But at the same time, you realize that it could not, and this is where you would be. And I realized, as someone who's been working as an advocate, for the blind and visually impaired, there was a hell of a lot I didn't know, and an awful lot left to learn, I think, as I've said in the film. But not just for me, but also for my family. My husband was like nuts about this. It was like horrible for him. And so we spent a lot of time just talking each other off the ledge and saying, we can handle this. And it's something that I learned a lot from the other people in the film. And I had them as an example to know, if this was if this was going to be my present, was going to be my future, I could handle it. And that's everything. That's really everything.
It was told in such a beautiful way that it was, kind of like you said, gearing up for this thing to happen, but that it would be okay. These people were a testimony that it would be okay. And we saw a lot of low vision aids. So Dr. Conway, I want to go to you and talk about what kind of resources are available, what kind of low vision tech is out there. What are you guys cooking up over there at U Arizona?
She's muted.
Oh, Dr. Conway, we got to turn you on. Are you muted?
Sorry, I was trying to be very quiet. Thank you very much for having me. Joe, I wonder if Jessica may not have had a different perspective if she had seen her sight go slowly, because she really had no choice when she had the apoplectic visual loss, but to deal with it. But I think most of my patients are grateful to have anything left.
Oh, of course. I think people tend to go with what they've got. If this is your situation, I can handle this, and I think that's what it is, which is a good thing, as opposed to sitting around regretting everything. But,
I have many patients I refer for low vision, and some of them are adamant that no, I don't need that. And it's like, no, it'll help you. You're like, no, I don't need that. I'm fine. And their daughter will say, don't do it. She doesn't read anyway. But it's like, well, she has to see TV, or she needs to go down to the dining room, and she needs to not stumble on a carpet. So I think there's a lot of different levels of low vision, and the aids are somewhat basic, like a lighted magnifier that's about the size of your hand, that's got really good German optics with a 4x, 7x, and 10x magnification. That can slip in a handbag, and you can check a menu or a price in the grocery store. It helps maintain independence. There are some very cool things that technology is doing. And one of them, I had a woman who was from New York who had a bad disorder that wiped out both her retinas. And she had this thing called an OR cam, which was just simply a pair of glasses, and it had a little camera right on the temple. And whatever she pointed it at, it read, if it was a printed word, it read it out loud to her perfectly.
Oh, how cool is that?
It was amazing. And it changed her life. I mean, she could read again. She could do her checkbook. It was amazing. It doesn't do so well with the handwritten word. But I've seen a lot of patients to explore that. But I think the other thing is the Veterans Administration has a wonderful low vision program, particularly here in Arizona. There's one in Tucson. They call it Boot Camp for the Blind, and they teach them some of the things that you were demonstrating, Joe, is how to get around your apartment, how to cook, make little things on the burner so you know if it's on and off. So each person has a different level of comfort with low vision aids, and each of them have different needs.
Yeah, I found the biggest help that I got was understanding where my deficits were, where the holes in my vision were, which we call a scotoma. And once I understood where that hole in my vision was, the major hole, which was devastating to me, and I couldn't understand how I could have gotten so far without knowing it, which is, of course, as you had alluded to before, Jamie, that the brain fills it in. But once that made a huge difference, because it allowed me to navigate around it, and continues to allow me to do that. But
well, let's turn over to our neurologist real quick. Dr. Benheim, we were talking just now about the part in Joe's movie where you see, I love that graphic that you did with that, Joe, where you could see what you saw and what your brain filled in.
Right.
How is our brain filling in those blank spaces for us, and how can that really trick us to maybe think we don't have a problem? Like where I had gone, and I'm glad I went to the doctor in time. Talk to me about how that happens.
Yeah, well, as everyone on this panel and everyone tuning in knows, the brain is the most complex, beautiful organ system in the universe. And the visual system is arguably the most evolutionary advanced single system in the brain. And the brain has an ability. Many of you have seen those paragraphs in which all the words are misspelled.
Yeah.
Your brain is filling in from its knowledge. And there's an extreme case of that, which is pathological, called confabulation. People who are blind because of bilateral occipital cortex involvement, usually from strokes, they'll deny that they're blind. They'll completely invent the visual environment around them. So that's a partial answer to your question. I have a question for Mandy. We have medical students on this session, and Mandy and I would like nothing better than some of them to become neurologists, ophthalmologists, or neuro-ophthalmologists. Mandy, the technology now that's evolving with chip implants and whatnot, what's the future as you see it for remediation of progressive visual loss?
Well, that's difficult. I'll tell you where we've been. Perhaps in the early 90s, there was a flourish of investigations. One was to have a chip, and Joe Rizzo was doing this in Boston, and he put his chip over the top of the retina. And then there was another subretinal chip a guy named Cho did, and it was implanted in the place of the retina, and then it would use the existing infrastructure, pathways, the ganglion cells, et cetera, as long as the optic nerve was intact, to take it to the brain. And then there were two groups. One was in Germany and one was at USC, and they were working on trying to stimulate the visual cortex. One of them came to market and recently went belly up because they had not enough people to use it, and it was probably more than $100,000 for the implant. And it basically took people who had almost no sight and maybe would let them see 2400, which to the layman is the big E. But it was $70 million in about 20 years to develop, and now they're belly up because they just don't have the money to sustain it. I think the more important one is what Joe showed in the movie, and that is the technology that will use stem cells, either the stem cells in the retina, as he showed, which is fabulous and so exciting. There are two groups that I know that are really far along working on stem cells for optic nerve regeneration. And then I think that's probably going to be where we're going. I've seen mouse studies where they put stem cells and they would drive them into the different types of the retina and give them fluorescent green protein so you could track them. And they showed in mice that they went all the way back to the lateral geniculate body and caused a synapse. And so that's pretty exciting. And I think that's probably going to be more where we're going than technology like implants and chips.
But we filmed that over 10 years ago, Mandy, and I'm sort of stunned that it hasn't been followed out that much more. Is there a reason?
I don't know. And there's a lot of things, like, do you remember the gentleman you interviewed who is the past research director? I think a lot of it is funding. I think funding is just so incredibly low for what we have to gain from it as a society.
Yeah.
The guy who's the chairman at Stanford is a glaucoma person, Jeff Goldberg, and he's working on regenerating the optic nerve, and he's got current NIH grants. But it's so, one thing that's so refreshing about this movie is, it gives people hope. And
Yeah.
I don't know if you know the guy who sold Revlon cosmetics, but he said, I don't sell cosmetics, I sell hope.
No. Because there's power in lipstick, my friend.
That's right.
I want to talk to Adam Zimmerman because we have our doctors on the panel, and Adam has been a patient many, many times, nearly 40 surgeries. Tell me about your vision story.
Sure. So I was born with severe vision loss. I was my parents' firstborn child in Maine in 1978, and luckily my pediatrician figured out something wasn't right with my eyes. And they sent me down to Boston because in Maine in 1978 there was just no technology. I had my first eye surgery before I was 3 months old. I had my first 20 before I was 3 years old. And I've subsequently had 6 cornea transplants starting when I was 18, and my last one was in 2006. You know, and I'm at a point with my vision where I'm done trying to fix it because I like who I am and I have adapted, and I'm lucky that I never had to lose it. I never had it. So that's why after my first cornea transplant, as I was just saying, I didn't know how visually impaired I was. They had to kind of explain that to me. And until I was about 6, I think, when I started school, really, I didn't know I was visually impaired at all. I mean, my parents, I was lucky that they sent me the message from a very young age that short of being a NASCAR driver, there was nothing I couldn't do.
Yeah. So you are low vision, so you can't see a little. What can you make out?
So enough to confuse people, which is fun for me.
Yeah,
I think the way I would explain it is the big E that was just referred to. I can see that. I can see the S and the L. And I do know the rest of the chart because it hasn't changed since 1978. But I can't actually read it.
You have to read it backwards. We can trick you.
Oh my goodness gracious! So seeing Joseph kind of.
Yeah,
Go
if
ahead,
I could just
Doctor.
interject to follow up on Mandy's explanation of where we're going as far as helping people with impaired vision.
Future.
2 years ago, the FDA approved a drug that is recombinant nerve growth factor. Right. And that was based on a Nobel Prize in the 1980s by an Italian scientist, Rita Levi-Montalcini. And I think it's only approved for one condition, neurotrophic keratitis, which is a corneal problem. But I'm surprised that over the years, it's explored for many other uses to regenerate parts of the nervous system that are degenerating or degenerated. But that's somewhat speculative on my part, but the advances of discovery in basic neuroscience are incredibly exciting.
They did do ciliary neurotrophic growth factor, and they encapsulated it, and they put it as a pellet that would hang in the eye. And that was used for a while, but I don't think it met enough metrics in its clinical trials that it ever was capitalized on.
Yeah. This drug, Oxybate, for neurotrophic keratitis, it's in the market. It comes, like many of these breakthrough therapies, with a substantial price tag, somewhere around $100,000 for a 2-month course of treatment.
Oh, right. And I think that for it to be effective for optic nerve regeneration, I think that it needs to be increased by something like a factor of 10 or something. Yeah, because we've been following that. We've been trying to encourage some of the American companies to go further with it. Right. This brings up something that really struck me when I first was diagnosed and first realized that it was more than a diagnosis. I had a problem. When I started reporting on health and medicine issues, I really knew nothing. But I was privy, unfortunately, to the early AIDS epidemic. It sort of hit my friends. We were ground zero for it. And so I covered AIDS for 2020 for about 10 years and continued to do it for ABC even after I left the company and when I opened my own company. So I was sort of astounded after being, sort of immersed with this extremely active patient population who would not take no for an answer and would not accept the slowness of research and the lack of urgency. and got involved with raising money and got involved with helping to shape research and help, come up with effective treatment within 25 years. It was sort of stunning to then become part of a patient population where none of that happened, where the patient was actually disempowered, where there was little communication between the ophthalmologist and the patient, where the patient often didn't know what was really going on with him or herself. And considering vision loss, all kinds of vision loss, are such psychosocial diseases like AIDS or like any major disease, it's sort of stunning to me that there isn't more active outreach to the affected community to try to harness research dollars, to try to harness more awareness like we're doing. I don't, it confuses me and confounds me.
Doctors, do we have a fundraising issue? I mean, Dr. Conway had just mentioned that this technology maybe went by the wayside because of money.
I think there's a lot of different issues that you're talking about. It's really hard to get an NIH grant this year. And if you are a busy practicing clinician, trying to put your clinic on hold and write an NIH grant, even if you have a great idea or you're lucky enough to be a physician scientist and you're trying to run a lab and then see people and then do retinal detachments like Jamie just had, it's a Herculean effort. And I think what happens is people sort of get to their mid-career and late career, unless they're in full-time academic practice with 4 fellows and the patients are pretty much taken care of and they just show up to the OR. It's really difficult to sustain a research program. And you almost need in your lab a couple of really top PhDs who understand it, who can keep the research going while you're seeing patients and doing that. And many people just throw their hands up and said, I want to have a life. I want to have kids. I want to go to their baseball games. And sometimes it could be 24/7 working on research to really make something happen. And this is just a guesstimate, but having a great idea and bringing it to fruition, maybe 10 years of really solid research.
I don't mean to interject, but I think part of the issue too is, Joe, you're talking about the advocate population. Advocacy requires money before you can afford to have the time to be an advocate, right? And 80% of people who are blind or visually impaired are unemployed. They're worried about getting food before they're worried about advocating for their needs as somebody who's blind or visually impaired. I'm very fortunate to be in the 20%. I graduated from law school in 2010, and it took me 8 years to get a job. It took me 8 years to get a job because of my vision. So that will always be the priority for somebody who's blind or visually impaired until they're in that lucky 20% and can figure out, okay, now I can be an advocate. And that's why I joined the board of the Arizona Center for the Blind and Visually Impaired, because it is incumbent upon those of us who are fortunate enough to have a job, to have access, to have those things, to speak up for the 80% that can't.
Yeah.
And you work over at CVS, one of my favorite places. Tell me about your role there.
I am an internal HR investigator. So I was in private practice for 8 years after graduating from law school back east because I didn't have any alternatives. Part of that was the economy in 2010 when I graduated. And part of that was unquestionably discrimination. I have enough vision that I could see the double takes people would do when I would walk in with my cane and they weren't expecting that. So I was very lucky that CVS gave me an opportunity, and I think that speaks to the loyalty that people with disabilities writ large, and certainly within the blind and visually impaired community, tend to have when somebody does, quote unquote, take a chance on them, even though all economic models show that it's not taking a chance, that there's actually a very strong business case for employing people with disabilities. But that's, to answer your question, I get to report out to our business leaders, our 300,000 colleagues, and recommend sort of where we move from here based on allegations of things like discrimination, wage and hour complaints. So I get to be a lawyer without having to be a lawyer, which is great.
Nice. I want to turn to our friends who are watching. I see a question in the chat, And this is from Dana. And Dana says, I'm a patient of Dr. Rizzo's in Boston. I have optic neuropathy, spelled that one out. And will nerve regeneration be something that happens soon for the average patient? Doc?
I don't have any data to support an answer yes or no. I have several patients like you, and I know Joe's probably waiting for this too, but I don't know. I don't know how soon.
We just don't know. So
Yeah.
we want to invite you to ask questions. If you guys want to ask questions, you can do that in the chat, and we're going to be watching for that. Go ahead, Dr. Bedheim.
Yeah, I'm not aware of anything close to the market in that arena. It's complex, and Dr. Conway mentioned 10 years to get a laboratory discovery that could be commercialized, and then to get it commercialized can be another decade or two. And as is unfortunately often the case, most of our pharmaceutical biotech companies are for-profit organizations. So for them to take a potential game changer, it has to have a business reason for them to, or sometimes you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars to get a new therapy to the market. And there is the orphan drug program and so on and so forth, but there are a lot of challenges.
So when you see your story now, does it ring different to you today than when you first debuted it?
When I look at the film,
when you watch your movie again today, does it ring different than when you first debuted it now, with all that you know?
it doesn't. It really doesn't. You know, because it's an ongoing process, and it's a journey. Sight loss is a journey, like life is a journey. And no, I think I see where I watch myself and I see, you know, it was really nice to be driving, and it was really nice to be, I don't ride a bike anymore since I lost my left eye, and or I don't ride it much. And I've actually accepted those losses with equanimity. I've just sort of let it, I haven't stamped my feet about it. I don't know why. But I guess it just seemed like, well, I was lucky to get this far, you know. I've had glaucoma for 30 years, you know. So.
All right, so we're looking at you over at the U of A, Dr. Conway. Tell me about something new, the new advances that you're working on over there. Encourage me.
Well, I would just want to say something I think Joe's movie really brought out a lot for me. And that is that, and probably, Paul, you see this all the time, that the loss is really part of the whole picture of depression. And we really need to deal with that with individuals with visual loss. It's really under-recognized and way under-treated. And it can, you know, just something that would be not only a mood elevator, but I think the movie for me was a snap to say, we need to pay attention here to how these people are feeling and how there's a huge deficit in support for them. And that's when when they feel hopeless. And I think that is a huge part of visual loss.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. As the son of a psychiatrist, virtually there's no disease, illness, condition that does not have a significant psychological aspect. And for the students, the medical students, please, please, please make that one of your take-home messages today, to ask your patients, are you depressed? Are you suicidal? You'll save a life if you ask that question enough.
You know, I think it's when I talk to groups, you know, I often say that our fear of blindness is very much based on ignorance and myth, because most sighted people don't know anyone who's successfully blind. And I had the privilege of doing the film and meeting people, I don't want to say extraordinary people, they were regular people who were faced with a challenge and met it and showed me that I could do it. And I think that that's really, really, really important for the public, for someone who's diagnosed with a vision stealing problem, and physicians to understand, that it's, the idea of it being a tragedy is maybe overstated. I mean, it's not something that you would embrace. It's not something that you want, but it's something you can deal with. And with support, you can deal with it that much better.
Well, and you can embrace it. That goes to the social model versus the medical model of disability that is often left out of the conversation. Sort of the assumption is that it needs to be cured. It doesn't always need to be cured. It is possible to live as somebody with blindness and visual impairment and to be okay with that, to embrace that, it makes it easier, honestly, to adapt to it when you accept it and don't keep spending, I'm not gonna have a 38th eye surgery unless it is really medically necessary. Right now, it's not, and I'm not doing it. I tap out, I'm done. And I love the life that I have right now. I don't need to have any more medical care at the moment. I mean, obviously, if something happens and I have, things that I need to take care of, I'll take care of them. But you can exist and you can live without assuming that you have to cure yourself all the time.
Yeah. And live well, Adam. As you said, just getting to know you via Zoom, you're often making jokes. You seem to enjoy your life. You're doing work that you enjoy. Open the door a little bit about how you get around in your place and how you handle work with low vision.
Yeah, so with work, I'm very lucky that I sit about 3 inches from my computer screen, but I also do use screen enlargement software, high contrast software, so that I don't have a lot of the glare. Glare is a big issue. So in fact, I was lucky. One of my coworkers' mothers recently had a stroke and had some vision issues. And she knew, hey, Adam, I can ask you, how did you adapt to this? What would you do? And I advised her, hey, get a phone for your mother that has inverted colors, so that it's dark background on light writing. And it made a huge difference for her mother. I was very happy about that. So in terms of how I get around, I'm very fortunate that I have a fiance who drives. So that's part of it. Public transportation, mobility here, part of the reason I moved here was that there's no snow, no ice. Growing up in Maine, those are obstacles, especially when you're walking your dog. And public transportation in Maine basically consisted of grabbing onto the first passing moose and holding on tight. So it's not great here. I mean, I did live in Boston and lived in San Francisco as well, where it was very good. But it's certainly better than where I grew up, and I can walk a lot of places when it's not 110 degrees.
I have a note from Dana again. Dana says to you, Joe, have you thought about riding a tandem bike with your partner as the captain?
I have, but I'm not there yet. I joined a swim team, which works, which is pretty good for exercise. And but we live at the beach in the summer, and I have been thinking for maybe next year that we would get get beach bicycles where it would be safe for me to drive. I mean, I can ride a bike. It's just in the city, it just causes me now so much anxiety because I see nothing, west of the right side of my nose.
Yeah.
I wanted to say something, Joe, that you were alluded to about not wanting another surgery. And it sort of ties into what Adam said as well. When you come to see us, we think we have to do something. If we don't offer you something, you'll think we're a bad doctor. That's not always the case.
Right.
I don't think very many ophthalmologists could comply with glaucoma drops. I'm just saying. That's a very tough regimen. 1 drop 3 times a day, 1 drop 2 times a day, one drop at nighttime. And that's a simplified regimen.
Right.
Okay. And the other thing is just not wanting another surgery. I assume, although I could be wrong, that the infection that you got was a complication of your trab, because that's usually what.
Well, actually, I think the infection actually was a slop. I was using a bandage contact lens for my corneal edema, and it gave me
Got it.
back. It gave me back 2 lines on the chart. So I was very thrilled, and I think I might have been sloppy in handling it, and
Well,
I think that's where the infection came from.
but we also have to know there are complications to everything we do, even something simple like a contact lens.
Yeah.
And so sometimes not doing something may be the right answer.
Yeah, definitely. No, I was just called the other day by a woman who was referred to me by Don Fletcher, you know, the low vision ophthalmologist, and she had very bad. Her vision had just gone from bad to much worse, and her doctor was pushing her to have an operation to lower her IOP, which was not her, and glaucoma was not her major problem, and she was trying to figure. She just wanted somebody to talk to, just to figure out, help her go through the steps. Like, do I really want to go through this, or as Adam says, do I want to leave things alone and deal with what I've got? And you know, it's a very rough issue. You know, it really, you know, and I have a feeling she's going to lean toward no intervention, and you know, and working on her skills, which she really needs to do.
Well,
I know we wanted to wrap this up maybe in about 10 minutes, so I want to give our folks who are watching a chance to chime in with a question if you have one. And then I want to have a kind of last notes from everybody, a takeaway that you got from the film, something that you want us to know about what's happening in the vision world. Doctor, I interrupt you. Dr. Conway, tell me what you wanted to say and kind of last notes for us today.
Well, I think that the film has so many great points. It's hard to give you one. I think the observation, it almost knocked my socks off when Joe said, I never had any blind friends or partially sighted friends. When you moved everything out of the apartment for Jessica to get in.
Right.
And I looked around and I said, I don't either. Why is that? Yeah. And that was a real eye-opener to me. That's really why I want my faculty to see this movie and why I want my residents to see this movie. Because it isn't, I mean, that's our business. We should be having partially sighted friends, and we should be thinking about how to make their lives normal.
And understanding what their lives are like, and
understanding what their lives are like.
And what
wow, is that an understatement?
And what perspective they can give you.
No
so let's go to our low vision friend, Adam. Adam, where can we find you, and how do we go to coffee with you so that we can have friends who can share the knowledge with us?
Yeah, well, you can find me through John at Arizona Center for the Blind. I am not shy about adding people on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, you name it. I'm on there. I'm a political junkie, so I'm on all that stuff, and trying to stay away from it right now.
Yeah. But he's open for taking our questions as
Always.
we move further.
Yeah,
thank you.
I think the most important thing that I would say is don't be afraid to ask. The only way to learn is to ask, and most visually impaired and blind people ain't afraid to talk.
Yeah, good. Dr. Benheim, last notes from the film and from your field.
Yes, and I would actually follow up on an observation that Adam made, that with attitude, you can overcome tremendous difficulties. And William James, who's considered the father of modern psychology, virtually 100 years before the fundamental principle of neuroplasticity was established in adults, meaning you can change the shape of your brain even when you're 70, 80 years old. And if you change your attitude, you change your brain. So that would be my final comment.
Yeah. From the neurologist, change your attitude, change your brain. I've got one of those wipe off pens that I write on my mirror with. So that's going on my mirror. So I'll see that every day. All right, Joseph, the floor is yours.
Can I add on to that?
Yes, please.
And because this was something I'd meant to tell you guys, and it just didn't fit in. In terms of neuroplasticity that Paul's mentioning, which is so incredibly important, I was alerted to some work that was being done in Germany about an optic nerve stimulation. And so from it was actually when we premiered the film in Germany. And this a researcher came up to me and he said, I'm working on something that might help you. It's totally experimental. Would you like to try it? And it's neurostimulation of the of the optic nerve, and it was started in St. Petersburg, Russia, at the Human Brain Institute. And so I went for twice a year for it for about 5 years, and now they're doing it at NYU. And Paul, what I found interesting about it was that it upped my mood. First of all, it improved my vision, but also it upped my mood so much. And I was wondering how much the improved mood had to do with the improved vision, because I noticed the mood before I noticed the improved vision. And when I say improved vision, Mandy, it was the improved vision was improved acuity, but a measurable difference in my optic field, in my visual field. And in fact, when I first came back to my doctor in New York, the tech, when he saw what happened, was jumping up and down. He said he's never seen anything like it. And
How did they do that, with an electrode? Did they put a microelectrode?
Yeah, I can send you a little video that we did on it. And it's alternating current, and it's put on, well, there are different ways to apply it. And you do it for about 20 minutes every day for 2 weeks is the routine that the doctors that I worked with do. And my visual field has remained pretty stable since I did these treatments. And it was
So it improved and it lasted.
Yeah, and it was absolutely degrading on a regular basis before then.
Paul, what do you think about what neurotransmitters are being used here? Are we increasing serotonin, norepinephrine, GABA?
So, yeah, I don't know, but dopamine perhaps.
Dopamine perhaps.
Joe, did you say that your mood improved before you noticed visual improvement?
Well, the first week that I did it, which was in 2010, I started on a Monday, and well, I guess it was probably about the same time, Paul. On Wednesday, I realized that I was on a very busy street in Berlin, and the oncoming traffic didn't create the glare that it had before, and which was a little astounding. And I was able to see features of people on the stage. I'd gone to a ballet and I could see the features of the dancers. And but my mood was that there was this feeling of elation, but it was more than just happiness. It was, I felt a little manic, and it scared me. And I was afraid that when I came down, I'd kill myself, But actually I came down, I was just teasing me. But I thought it'd be a very heavy down. But it really, I came down after about a week to a high normal, and stayed there for, I would say, several months.
Well, it was a leading question on my part, because we talked about attitude.
Sure.
And that procedure gave you a new measure of hope.
Absolutely.
And I think, irrespective of the physiological outcome, the improvement of your vision,
right.
You will have felt better before you noticed the
right. Yeah, no question about it. It was like, rather than watching the water leak out of the bucket, it was at least giving me some agency, which was very important to me.
And that's
I want to bring in John Williams to talk for a minute, because I know there's a viewer comment that he wants to read. Also, we talked about awareness, we talked about advocacy, and we want to have a call to action and a place we can go. So John, come on back in here and join us. I know that you have a comment you want to read for us as well.
Yeah, I wanted to say, because we have a couple of interesting comments from people that are on the call today. From Barb, I lost 75% of my vision after surgery 6 years. So grateful for the 25% that I have. I want to say that the two blind and visual impairment groups, Wisconsin OBVI and Lions Camp, have been outstanding in accepting and learning tips, tools, and joys. Just one experience. And then certainly from Regina, she made the comment, this movie was heartfelt. By me, I'm legally blind with a guide for the past 2 years. But when all this started 12 years ago, I was more or less left on my own to deal with my vision loss. It's been a journey. Thank you for bringing up the need for doctors to suggest mental health help. This has been very enjoyable and informative.
I also saw a question that says, is there a way others can watch the film for a fee? How can we advocate for vision resources?
Well, to watch the film, you just go to our website, goingblindmovie.com, and you can stream it. It's a couple of dollars, and it helps us with our outreach.
John, how do we advocate here locally?
Oh, advocate.
And across the nation?
That's always, well, you can see the sign behind me, but certainly the Arizona Center for the Blind and Visually Impaired, we're out to create those independence needs for the blind, visually impaired, and combined vision and hearing loss. So, you can always reach us on our website, which is acbvi.org. We always take donations because that's my job, of course. But, we take, Adam was talking about advocacy earlier. We're out there to assist and to bring training and independence to all those individuals, not only in Phoenix, because a lot of we serve in Phoenix and Maricopa County, but across the state of Arizona. So always feel like you can give us a call or email us. And like I said, we will be sending out copies of all the videos today, or the video today, with our contact information. And you can always reach us and make that contact if you know someone that has vision loss, impairment. We are the resource for them. We will try to help them and gain what they're missing in their lives, and that independence.
I see the link just added to the chat there. So the Going Blind movie, it's goingblindmovie.com/watch. So it's right there. Thank you, everyone, for participating in this panel. Thank you for having me as well. We really learned a lot, I think.
Thank you for everyone showing up. We appreciate it. And be Vision Awareness this month, and like all months of the year.
Terrific.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
Let's stay in touch.
It's my pleasure to meet you, Joe. Thank you so much.
John and Jamie, thank you for putting this together. Joe.
Adam, you're an inspiration.
It's really been fun. Really been fun. You guys are terrific. Thank you, John, for all you do.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Have a great night.